So hello and welcome to the second Digital Thinkers Forum. My name is Marcus and I'm one of the co-founders of Testbirds, and I will be your host for roughly the next hour. Maybe before we get started, a couple of hints regarding technical details. Everyone dialing in today is muted, so don't be alarmed. We cannot hear any of you. And if you want to, you do have a couple of different options regarding views available to you. I would recommend switching between maybe speaker view for the keynote sessions that we have, and then you are welcome to switch to a gallery view that's available in Zoom, especially at the end for the panel discussion. So for the last Digital Thinkers Forum, today is the second edition of this format. Last time our topic was innovate faster, communicate smarter. And we had lots of different cases. We had the presidential campaign in the US. We had the innovation culture in Silicon Valley. So it was very broad. And today we want to focus a little bit more on a topic called customer experience, and also customer experience lessons learned from superheroes. So when we started Testbirds back in 2011, customer experience was not really something that anyone ever mentioned, let alone focused on much. It was still kind of traditional waterfall development methodologies. But since then, things have really changed quite a bit. And nowadays, customer experience is not only something that people mention, but also something that really kind of makes or breaks a product or a service. So it's kind of one of the key deciding factors for success. And customers really have only the highest expectations, and they expect really good customer experience when they use a service or a product. So when you then also add superheroes to the mix, then things really become interesting. And personally, I'm a big superhero fan. I have a big box of comic books back home in my old room, and one of my favorite superheroes was actually Spider-Man. When you kind of read those comic books, or if you're familiar also with superheroes, then it's quite common, or actually every superhero story has a story of failure before they become successful and kind of triumph in the end. For Spider-Man, some of you might remember this. This was one of the first failures was Spider-Man, or Peter Parker, failing to rescue his Uncle Ben from being marked and shot in the street. And that moment really defined a lot of the storyline that happened for the years to come for Spider-Man. So something else that has also stayed with me, and that's something that Uncle Ben told Peter Parker, that was, with great power comes great responsibility. And I think this can be applied to many different aspects of our lives, but it can also be applied to something like customer experience and how we, being in a position to create different kinds of customer experiences, how we deal with that responsibility, and what kind of experiences we also create. So one of the main questions today is, what can we learn from superheroes about customer centricity? And today's speakers, they will share some really tangible insights and tips and tricks, what we can learn, and also hopefully how they can help you also to contribute to your own superhero journey when it comes to customer experience. We have two keynote speakers today, followed by a short panel discussion, where we will discuss some of the highlights, but also we'll try to answer some of the questions from the audience. So really important, if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat or the Q&A section. We'll really monitor those and try to answer them individually, also as part of the panel discussion at the end. So we really want to make this an interactive session. Please feel free to ask us any questions that you might have. So the first keynote today is from Laura Fleming Schulte. She is the CEO of Project Renaissance. And if you go to her website, you will see it's saying that she's helping B2B innovators to win the race to market. And what I personally like, and maybe she will also touch upon that a little bit in her talk, is that she says that she is inspired by Renaissance Florence, which was one of Europe's first innovation ecosystems. So the title of the keynote today is "What We Can Learn from Superheroes About the Human Factor and Customer Centricity." We can already see you now, Laura, so welcome today, and I'll hand over to you for your presentation.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Marcos. And I'm very excited to be here, and thank you also for sharing your story. That's got some relevancy for my presentation as well. I'm different. I didn't start out absolutely loving superheroes, but I'll show you how I came to understand how much they have to teach us. So today we'll be looking at learning customer experience from superheroes, and another title for this could be How to Fail Like a Hero and Write the Next Chapter of Success. This is a topic that I first came to. I'll show you in a moment. We'll do a poll, and the poll is, who is more powerful, Batman or Iron Man? Because these are the two superheroes that really introduced me to the opportunity to learn from this whole culture. So I think you're doing the poll. And actually, I can't see my display for the poll right now. So Marcus, if you could let me know when it's finished, I'll continue. Great. Can you share the results too?
Should be fine now.
Okay, great. Would you like to share the results? And I'll show you why in a moment.
Iron Man is the favorite.
Iron Man. We think Iron Man is more powerful. Okay, this is good. I came to this from differentiation, and differentiation is a topic that I work with for go-to-market strategy. Batman, oh, it was kind of close, and 17% aren't sure. Well, I wasn't sure either. I actually didn't know too much about Iron Man, and I was looking for a way to talk to some SaaS cloud, so solution providers, about differentiation and not sound too much like the marketing person that they have a tendency not to trust. So I looked into what could work, and I thought of superheroes as being something that kind of is in this tech zone. And I asked my 8-year-old superhero advisor, hey, are there any superheroes that are exactly the same? He said, absolutely not. There are no two superheroes that are exactly the same, but there are some that are similar. I thought, fantastic. And so he helped me in a matter of minutes figure out the difference between Batman and Iron Man. They're both wealthy. Neither one of them have any superpowers. They're both very intelligent and love gadgets. But the big difference is Batman can plan ahead and come when you need him. And Iron Man is someone you got to catch in the spur of the moment. And if you plan ahead, he might not show up because he might not be interested. Okay, so those are two really different use cases, and it depends on when you need to be saved. And that's where the question comes, who would be more powerful? Depends. So when I first started looking into superheroes, this is when I ran across this wonderful quote from Stan Lee, who's the creator of so many of the superheroes.
Laura?
Yes?
Sorry to jump in. We can't see your slides yet.
No. Let me see.
I just realized that we should be seeing them by now.
We should be seeing them. Let me try again. What is this? Failing like a hero, right? Let's go here first. And let me see if I can find them for you. It's my new technology with a couple different screens. Let's see if we can get them working.
Something always doesn't work, so we got it out of the way now.
I saw Steve Jobs fail in this presentation once. So, still not seeing them, right?
Not yet.
Okay, just a minute. Tell you what, we'll do it this way. Okay, everyone close your eyes for a minute while I share my screen. How about that?
There we go. Looks good.
There we go. Okay, so this was the slide. This is the work from my 8-year-old advisor who helped me understand the difference between Batman and Iron Man with bullet points of differentiation. So it really depends on when you need to be saved. And this wonderful quote from Stan Lee says, superheroes are selling themselves as products. And actually, I think it's a little more because yes, superheroes, we expect them to save us. That's the main thing we all think of. But we expect them to serve us. And we also have an expectation to be inspired, inspire me. So save me, serve me, inspire me. And that means really they're selling themselves as experiences because it's much bigger. It moves into the emotion. And this is the other emotion that's behind it. We have this expectation. So we also want superheroes, don't let me down. We don't want to be let down. You can see where I'm going with this as far as customer experience, because here, what we're talking about is trust. And a large element of customer experience has to do with trust. We might not think so right at first, but there really is a tremendous business value in trust. And it's something that I've been looking at in the past year as we've had to move to all online communication and missing that face-to-face aspect, which is a big part of trust. But there are a lot of parts of trust that we can see in real business. So if we look at another poll, I'd like to think, what do you see is the most important business value of trust? There we go. Okay. So there are a bunch of them there, and I'm sure there are others, but just what's the most important? One of the places we see trust is actually in the stock market. So we'll see when this comes through, and I'll tell you a little bit about my backstory, because all superheroes have a backstory as well as a superpower. As Marcos, you told us about Peter Parker. And so how are we doing with our poll? Who's the winner?
Let's wait some seconds.
Okay.
Still going on.
Yeah. Yeah, and trust, it's fascinating. At first it seems so soft, but it's actually measurable. What comes to the top?
Partnerships.
Partnerships. Okay, fantastic. I think it also has an awful lot to do with innovation, and I'll show you why. Partnerships. Okay, that was the clear winner. Innovation, 5%. Interesting. So I work with a lot of startups and a lot of founders, and so much of innovation is about trust and trying something new. So here, I'll close this one and we'll move on. So with trust, it's actually what we invest in. We invest first in something we trust to work, and then we complain later if it doesn't, right? So from new products to visionary innovators, trust is really how we move forward in something that's new or different or untried, even something we've tried before and we expect it to keep working. So you have buy-in in sales, collaboration, partnerships, and speed of success, which is all an aspect of innovation. So here's another place we measure it, the stock market. In the bottom left, you see a picture of the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. And a few years ago, I was the managing director at Windeln.de in one of the departments, and we had our IPO. It was very exciting. I'd been involved in the road shows and talking to Goldman Sachs in London. It was like scenes out of Mad Men. And here I am in the bottom with one of the founders and some of the women from my team. And you see the bell in the background, right? You see the bell right here. So here's the opening, 18 euro per share. And this is very exciting. We're feeling very heroic. And then this happened. So Windeln.de, we sold products for families with babies and young children. And this is what happened to the stock value over the last 5 to 6 years. I can't blame it all on conditions, because this is what happened to our competition. So it's a very different story, one that I would have preferred to have been a part of, but I'm also looking and learning at what went wrong in our story. And this competition, maybe you know, it's a company with kind of an orange logo and so forth, and they also do e-commerce. They had a great 5 years. So what that shows you is failure. And failure is really hard to look at, but we can learn from it, and we should learn from it more often. So here, too, is an aspect of superheroes. Every hero's story has a chapter of failure. It's the next chapter that inspires us. It's what you do next. So here we have a bunch of wonderful superheroes. And I don't know if anyone saw Endgame. I don't want to do any spoilers, but in this film, there's a moment where Thor is recovering from a failure. And Thor looks more like the Big Lebowski than he looks like Thor. And Rocket, one of his colleagues, says, "Hey, you look like melted ice cream." And that's really, really another major fail, melted ice cream. So I think we know this is all part of superheroes. And it's not just me, it's not just emotions, it's not just the movies, it's not just stories. There's real research to back this up. And recently, Deloitte Digital came out with the 4 signals of trust. And they've named this 2021 the year of trust. And here we see down at the bottom, capability and reliability. We understand that to be part of what makes a product valuable. But here at the top, humanity and transparency, okay, that's a little bit fluffy and soft and can make people uncomfortable. The bottom 2 are about competence. The top 2 are about intent. So I found this fascinating. And here, there's actual real measurable value here. Can we trust your intent? Not your product, but your intent. When customers trust intent, customers are 1.6 times more likely to buy from you over the competitor. And employees, when they trust intent, we're 2.6 times more likely to be motivated at work. That's massive. And so what does intent look like? It's like whether or not we balance people and the environment or society with profits. Keep it in balance. Do we respect customers, employees, and partners? Do we fix issues quickly and safely for all, not making people wait, but actually show we care? So that, when we talk about intent, we're talking about purpose, and we know what's next after purpose. After purpose, we're talking about the backstory. So I'm going to show you now a story of an epic fail. I'm sure you know which story I'm talking about. And this was one that was a failure, not just of the company, but was an actual problem for the whole concept of made in Germany. Now, what's the backstory of VW? VW had an epic failure with the diesel engines and the scandal of how they actually tricked the testing equipment for California, the state of California. State of California specifically has an iconic backstory that's together with the VW van. So here's a very shiny looking VW van on the coast in California. It's also part of my backstory. Here's a picture of me. This is me here in the yellow shirt. That's my dad and my brother. And we've made it to the West Coast from Pennsylvania. And here is our version of the VW van, which no longer had the emblem. But here we are at San Gregorio State Park. So it's a part of my own background. This is my sister, who is actually a future owner of one of those disastrous diesel engines, right? That's the car she bought to be environmental. And what we come to is not just a failure, but a betrayal. And we always want to move very, very far away from being anywhere in the space of being in a fail that's a betrayal, because that's where we've betrayed the trust, the deep trust. And the more the trust, the more we can actually risk a betrayal. So here's a story of my own epic fail. When I was working at Windel.de, in the business that I ran was a flash sale company, kind of like Vente Privée. And we had moms and they were buying gifts at Christmas for their children. This is just one of the things that went wrong, but there are several. And we had a problem with Christmas delivery. Now, we order way far in advance. The moms ordered in advance, and you plan ahead and you get a great discount. So the cost loss when a product wasn't available to be shipped wasn't very high. But the value as a Christmas gift, to find out just a few days before that you no longer had this gift for your child, that's greater than 20 euro. So what is Batman worth in that situation? It depends. And so here's a wonderful calculation for betrayal. You have this terrible disappointment plus the expectation in the moment that makes it even worse. And that's where you have betrayal. And this is what a lot of the moms who were my customers looked like. So where do we go from there? This is a question of leadership. We have to look at our own leadership and look at ways to build in better customer experience and plan for these fails. So we have to trust our frontline, first of all, of course. And we have to give them the superpowers to make changes, because our customers actually believe that on the connections with everyone in the company, that the person on the front line actually has superpower over them. So we have to empower them to act and move quickly. But I think the biggest challenge is really how are we looking to see the truth? How are we looking to hear what's happening? In this picture, we have Wonder Woman and the lasso of truth. If you know your superheroes, you know all she has to do is put that on you, and no matter what, you're going to tell her everything. I like to look at the lasso of truth as a way to help us remember to look further for truth, not just the truth, the first level of truth that we want to hear, but really look further, and to replace failure with an innovator's test and learn mindset. That means test and learn. Some results have to be negative, so failures are part of the process, but they're smaller. And so we want to fail like a hero. To do that, we have to plan ahead. We have to plan, we got to get our padding on. We have to have some of the protective gear on. We have to know the conditions and the situation, and we have to test. We want to test across all three of those expectations that I mentioned. So here's what it looks like. For Save Me is the aspect that our customers have for solve a problem for me. If you think about design thinking, solve a problem for me is I have a problem, I can't solve it, your product, service, or offer does. That's the Save Me, and we've got to do it well. So when we're looking at that, we need to test all of our superpowers. That's what we're doing to save them, and who we're saving. Are we saving the right person the right way? Because a superhero who comes to save someone who doesn't need saving is really just super annoying. So we come here and make sure that we're designing from the start to test, and we're testing that design on the customers and looking at our customer segments. We're also looking for negatives. We have to be on the search for negatives, negative results, and also looking for bias so that we don't miss something that's valuable either in correcting a process or showing us an opportunity. And we have to trust and empower quick fixes because part of that experience was how quickly we react to a problem. We don't want to be saved like whenever the superhero gets around to it. We want to be saved now when we need it. The next one is Serve Me. And Serve Me is a little bit different. Serve Me is help me look for danger that I didn't even know existed and stop it before it ever affects me. And this goes on all the time in the world of superheroes. So when we're looking at Serve Me from a customer experience perspective, think about this. 86% of shoppers are willing to pay more for a better customer experience, but only 1% believe they experienced it. So someone's missing something in the data. So let's look. How do we find that? We want to test for complexity and then learn how to make this whole process simple for the customer. We test for danger and give peace of mind. What does that mean? With a chatbot, when is the right moment to move from the chatbot to a person? Is the chatbot actually working properly? How many times have we as customers been stuck in a loop that doesn't work? It's maddening. What about this one? The no answer for your NPS. Is it a happy case? Is it a problem case? Or is it a person who's so angry they can't even answer the survey? Those are the edge cases. And there's opportunity in edge cases. Those are the places where you go and see there's a chance actually for a different customer segment. Maybe there's a new opportunity there. And then this unbiased insight, is it data or are we going direct? When we don't understand something, we want to go direct. I had a friend of mine telling me about his team coming in doing a customer experience task force. And he said the only person missing in the task force was the customer. So talk to the customers. Then we have this big one. This big one is inspire me, right? We look to superheroes to be better than we are. We want to be inspired. Now, how do you inspire with products? That's innovation. We could say, oh, we just want to do what our customers would like. We should just ask them what they want. But we know that that's not always the place to go for the best ideas. So we have to be looking out forward for our customers for what's an opportunity and what could be coming along. I work a lot with founders, with companies and innovators trying to determine what a future outcome could look like. I do uncertainty mapping for a concept that's a variation on scenario planning. It's a lot like Google Maps or Waze. You know where you are, you know where you think you want to go, and then you map your route there. And then you switch depending on what changes, because we know these days there's so much change. There's so much we can't plan for, but we can plan for options as things happen. The more we think about it, the more we'll actually begin to see what kinds of factors could impact us and how. So we need to take the time to develop that type of superhero vision. So looking now at what kinds of technologies are out there, there are so many. And the question is, which one's the right one for customer experience, or which one should we be investing in? So here we have another poll. This is actually one that's interesting for me to hear the results, because I'd like to know from so many of you, where do you see the big opportunities in technology? Bigger question would be why, that's the purpose and the vision, but where do you see the big opportunities? So here, which technology will impact customer experience the most in your industry? Is it personalization? Is it the Internet of Things? Is it data or security? AI, machine learning? Maybe it's blockchain, mobility, cloud. There are so many things that are happening right now, and they can all have an effect on how we work with customers. And some can contradict each other, like the personalization and the data. So let's see what the results are. I'm always excited with this one. How are we doing so far?
40 people already voted. Let's wait some seconds.
Okay. I think the AI is also really, really interesting for customer experience. Yeah, I had a hard, when I was building the list, I was trying to think, I don't know, there's so many that are really fascinating and with so many different relevancies. Yeah, okay, AI was the winner, but personalization also. Okay, blockchain, not so much. Interesting. The payment systems, it could be, that could have quite an effect, but other, great. Okay, so lots of choices. And of course, the answer is, it's going to depend on your vision. And here, you can have so many different technologies to work from, so many different possibilities with customers, but really the question is, what's your vision of the better world? What's your leadership vision of where you should be taking your customers? Where is it next? And that's something that you can only develop with the thinking, the testing, and the learning and the mindset to move yourself forward in small increments as a constant process. So this leading towards a better future is something that never stops. The pace of development is of course faster, and with trust, we should be able to test and learn faster, get the results in faster, and learn from them faster in a constant process. And this is something where every product launch should be a moment where you're testing how it's going and then building in all of the feedback from there. So you're incorporating the learnings as a process, you're testing emerging needs and technologies, and you're seeking opportunity in change for your customers. And this is something we've seen our superheroes evolve over time. And it all comes from a backstory and a purpose. And if you think, where is that backstory purpose? What is my superpower for my customers? And where should I be taking them into a better world? That's where we're going to get these really great results. And here I have the same quote that Marcus had. With great power comes great responsibility. We have real responsibility for shaping the future for customer experience. And so I wish you all a lot of luck with that, and to keep the superheroes as sort of a reminder of leadership ideals and the value of learning from your failures.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura. That was really some great insights. Maybe also to point out, this was not scripted, so I did not pick the quote that Laura just showed on her last slide because of that, but I didn't actually know she would show this quote. So yeah, that was a nice end. Maybe one question before we move on to the next keynote. You mentioned in the beginning you weren't always really that much interested in superheroes, so you probably don't have a lot of comic books back home. So what got you hooked on this topic, and you know quite a bit based on what the references you made to some of the superhero stories. So what got you hooked on the topic?
Well, I wasn't really that interested in superheroes. I had a few comic books, but I had Richie Rich, so not too many people know him, Casper the Ghost, so somehow didn't get into that superhero scene. But I was looking for a way to present this concept of differentiation to tech people, to engineers, to CEOs with deep technical expertise. And I needed to win their trust. And I know one of the prejudices that a lot of people in that kind of a role have is against the person who has marketing blah blah as their industry. And I look like that's what I do. So I had to find a way that made sense to my customers and that won their trust and got them excited. And I tried this idea of superheroes at an AWS workshop, and the result was stunning. It was instantly everyone was happy. Instantly everyone was engaged. We talked about products and what is your superpower and how is yours unique to you, and who's the person on the other side that benefits, and how specifically do they benefit. Spider-Man was one of the examples. And we talked about Spider-Man has a superpower to save people, not everyone, but people who are close by, because he has Spidey sense. And I didn't know about Spidey sense, but it's people who are close by who are about to be in danger. So it senses it in advance. So I use it to explain value propositions. And I've also moved on to look at founders and personal branding and what is your own superpower. And that always gets based in a backstory. Why are you dedicated to what you do, and what is your unique expertise? And from there, if we're leaders, we need to be knowing where we're going, because it's great to have people follow us, but best is if we know where we're taking them.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, it certainly also would have worked with me. I also get quite enthusiastic then about the superhero topic. So great. Maybe let's keep the other questions for the discussion at the end and move on to our next keynote. And learning from mistakes, testing out new things. That's also certainly relevant for the next topic. So we'll talk a little bit more about something called user experience, which is a part of the customer experience topics, especially then when we look at using a certain product. Especially in times like these, we use a lot of digital products. We also maybe do a lot of things digitally that we used to do in person before, and therefore successful user experience is really important and brings us closer to our customers and them to us, especially then when they also feel understood and when we meet kind of the needs, why they're using our product or our service. So to achieve exceptional user experience, you could also say that you also have to become a superhero and follow this test and learn approach that Laura just mentioned as well. And this is where our next speaker comes in. And I welcome Barra O'Leary. He is a UX consultant and project manager, also here at Testbirds. And he has also previously worked for companies like Amazon and Apple. And I also know from personal experience that Barra is very excited and very knowledgeable when it comes to all things UX, design, UI, so everything that kind of touches the user. So I'm very excited to hear what you have to say, Barra, in your keynote. The topic is Test, Learn, Improve, Succeed, Supernatural User Experience. So over to you.
Thanks, Marcus, for the introduction. And yeah, it's really great to see all the people that have joined. And yeah, as Marcus mentioned, I'll be talking about a kind of 4-stage process of achieving a supernatural user experience. So it'll be test, learn, improve, and succeed. I am just going to share my screen here. And everybody should see the presentation now. If you don't, please do let me know. I will be monitoring the chat. So also if you have questions, feel free to post them in the chat. I will see them. So yeah, if they're relevant to what I'm talking about on a particular slide, I'll happily answer them. But yeah, in this talk, I'll be touching on a case study that I was part of last year. So as Marcus mentioned, I work as a UX consultant and project manager for Testbirds. And last year, I also returned to university to complete a master's in interactive media. And part of that master's, was developing a digital product for a stakeholder, and designing and developing that product basically from scratch. And so I'll be covering this case study and drawing parallels to a well-known superhero, and how you can see some of the similarities between building a product and also how a superhero comes to be. One of the main quotes that I'd like to show everyone and kind of underline the overall presentation is one from the Batman Begins movies, and that's from Batman's father, Thomas Wayne. And after Batman falls down the well at the beginning, then his father rescues him and kind of reassures him and says, "And why do we fall, Bruce? So that we can learn to pick ourselves up." And the important thing about this quote is, not being afraid to fail, and also not striving for perfection, which is a really important thing to note especially when you're designing products in the early stages. Nothing is going to be perfect. You'll learn things you thought it was good, but your users will tell you was not good at all. I do have a poll for people in the audience because I am talking about Batman, but maybe not everybody knows or has seen the movies. So you should receive a poll. Have you seen the movie Batman Begins? It's just a yes or no answer. The answer won't affect the presentation. It's more for my own interest to see who's seen the movie and who hasn't. If you haven't, I would recommend it. Similar to Laura, I'm not a massive superhero fan, but I would be a fan of cinema. And the Batman trilogy from Christopher Nolan is a really good series of movies, so I would recommend it. Next I'm going to talk about some of the background of my case study of my master's thesis last year. So it's looking at the results of the poll, it's actually pretty 50-50. Not everyone has seen it. I can, I've covered a bit more and explain any characters if needed. Anybody who likes cinema, I would definitely recommend to check it out. It's a great movie. I'll give a little bit of background about my master's thesis and the product I decided to build. So there were a number of different stakeholders within my university, from the psychology, student health, and business information departments, that were building a website. It's called My Youth. My Youth's goal was to reduce the harms associated with illicit substance abuse in university students in Ireland. The goal for me was to develop an interactive mindfulness and self-reflection tool for student well-being. And the idea was that students would be directed to use the support tools to explore how substance abuse impacts their life as a student. And they complete an assessment and receive personalized feedback. This web tool would also help students learn skills for mindful decision-making that align with their own personal values and long-term goals. And that's where my product would enter in and would help them. So it wouldn't really be focused on helping them with or overcome challenges with drug use. It would be more of a space to learn some mindful techniques or self-reflection tools. And so the main challenge with this project was to implement a user-centered design approach to analyze the end user needs and apply these needs to increase the engagement of the tool by involving the target audience in key stages of the development process. When you're using a user-centered design methodology to approach your design, then it's really important to understand the need of your users first. And this was not my research in building the user personas. This was a 2-year research from University College Cork. So these statistics are from some of those papers. And so 23% of all 18 to 24-year-olds report misusing illicit substances in 2016. And almost 1/5 of third-level students report misusing substances other than marijuana, which is quite surprising. And when we talk about third-level students, we mean anything after high school, so university, college, or anything yeah, anything after high school. And then finally, illicit substance abuse negatively affects physical and mental health, as well as academic achievement. Yeah, the approach that we took with our design process was having an iterative design process. So as it was a user-centered design approach, we really wanted to involve the target audience as much as we could. And yeah, we really wanted to focus on the user. So it was really important to follow an iterative design process that was not linear. We could test often and with actual users. And next was to follow a mobile first design. The reason for mobile first design was really twofold. So yeah, they've been shown to be an effective platform for delivering interventions because of their low cost and always on availability. But also there's a really high prevalence of mobile technology use in the target group of university students, with almost 90% of 18 to 24-year-olds having access to a smartphone with internet access. And yeah, so in the first step, it was really important to test early. And I will also emphasize progress over perfection, as I touched on at the beginning. Yeah, your initial designs are not going to be perfect, and they almost shouldn't be perfect. Testing is a learning procedure, and yeah, you should aim for progress as opposed to perfection. And coming back to the Batman movies, at the very beginning of the movie, Batman was testing out his prototype suits, and yeah, it wasn't the most welcoming looking suit. This was his suit for the first mission of when he recruited the police commissioner. Yeah, it's quite a limited suit. It's just a suit. There's no helmet. He has no cape. Actually, he doesn't even look like Batman. And yeah, he had to test this suit at the very beginning of the movie. And yeah, he ended up, for anybody who hasn't seen it, it's not a spoiler, but he falls off the building quite unelegantly, and yeah, hurts his head and isn't able to break his fall. So that was his first test of the suit. And yeah, I would emphasize also to test early and test often. With my support tools and my product that I was developing, I opted for a thinking aloud interview approach. I took 4 students from University College Cork in Ireland and held 1-hour interviews where I called them on Teams and shared the prototypes online via Sketch. These are clickable prototypes that they could use while also speaking to me over Microsoft Teams online. And yeah, I could get their experience of the prototype and get their thoughts, impressions, and feelings. And yeah, it was really important to get qualitative data. And I also gave them links to 2 surveys, a net promoter score, which is really rating if you would recommend the product to a friend, and a system usability scale, which is a 10-question survey aimed at getting users' perceived usability of a product. And that gave me quantitative measures to measure usability throughout the testing sessions. The next step would be to learn from the testing. And it's really important to, especially from a user-centered design approach, is to really know your customers or your users. If you're designing without knowledge about your customers or your users, then yeah, I mean, you're really not going to win them over when you release your product at the end of the day. But you might get lucky. And so, yeah, with that in mind, I would also like to ask people if they are familiar with mindfulness. And again, nobody needs to be familiar with mindfulness to get the most out of this presentation. It's, again, more for my own knowledge, and I think it's always interesting. You know, sometimes I think a lot of people know what it is, but actually a lot of people don't, and it's one of my early pitfalls with this project in particular. One of my assumptions was that students had heard of mindfulness and were familiar with it. And so, yeah, actually the importance of pre-test questions and getting to know your users was one of the most beneficial things in this project. So out of the 4 users, I asked them a range of questions. One of those questions was, are they familiar with mindfulness? And actually 50% of those 4 users hadn't even heard of mindfulness or were familiar with it. Yeah, I can see from the poll that, yeah, 3/4, so 75%. So that's really good. It's actually surprising. I would have thought it was a little bit less. But yeah, that's good to know. And so, yeah, I asked different questions to get to know who I was testing. So how many hours a day they use the internet, and what's their main internet browsing device, their favorite apps, and do they use any health-related apps or websites? And lastly, yeah, their familiarity with mindfulness. The 2 really important questions, yeah, one was the internet browsing device. So yeah, 3 out of the 4 users use their smartphone, and this underlined the need to follow a mobile-first approach. And also that only 2 out of 4 users had heard of mindfulness, and that was really eye-opening to me, and it made me reevaluate my initial designs. Some of the feedback that I got was that they actually didn't even know what the purpose of this application was. Yeah, one of the quotes is something to do with breath, not sure what I'm getting into. Another good piece of feedback was that it was people prefer imagery, or at least this target group preferred imagery. Also, they skipped the instructions because there are just too many words. I had an onboarding process in the first prototype, and yeah, actually, students really didn't like this onboarding process. They preferred a learning by doing approach. And yeah, they preferred instructions on the screen as I do it. So they wanted live instructions, not instructions during an onboarding process. Yeah, I'd also named this application Square Breath. A lot of, yeah, people in medical fields who are familiar with breathing techniques would know of a technique known as square breath, but looking back, I realized it was actually really confusing for students because the animation was circular, but the name of the product was square breath. So yeah, that was also a really good eye-opening piece of feedback. And yeah, next onto the improve section. So yeah, here I'll be talking about how we use that feedback to improve the next version of our product. So yeah, we can draw parallels to Batman. So at the beginning, as I said before, his initial costume was pretty crude, and yeah, didn't have a helmet, had no way to break his fall. Yeah, couldn't glide through the air. After he tested it out, he realized, okay, I need a headpiece to protect my head, and I also need something to break my fall. And yeah, this is when Batman put together the helmet that actually represented a bat, and also the wings that helped him, one, break his fall, and yeah, glide through the air if he was to leap off buildings. And also for my support tools, I gathered all the feedback and yeah, ordered them in order of severity in terms of how many times it was mentioned. So if the encounters is equal to 4, that means everybody had this piece of feedback. And I just ordered these, and yeah, during my development process, and also, well, initially design process, designed a new version with some of this feedback in mind. As you can see, I changed the name of the application to Mindful Breath, also gave a landing page with some information about what the tool is and why they should use it, or how it will help them. And yeah, and then lastly, we'll talk about succeeding. And I would also use this term succeed with a grain of salt because, yeah, I don't think a product is ever finished. Yeah, we're all striving to have the perfect product, but in reality, it will always, yeah, keep going, and development will keep happening. And yeah, we'll talk about the success of this particular project. So for my new prototype, yeah, looking at the quantitative data, so the system usability scale went from 77.6 to 86 with the same users, and the net promoter score went from -25 to 66. Yeah, I mean, anything over 0 is usually pretty good for the NPS score. And yeah, it scored really well after gathering feedback from the users and making those changes that they wanted. And yeah, just like also Batman tend to succeeded at the end of the movies. Yeah, we're always striving for a minimum viable product, but ultimately we always need to keep designing and keep developing. Yeah, just as Batman thought he had saved Gotham at the end of the movie and that everything was over, he was shown a Joker card, and obviously this leads into the second movie. And yeah, it just goes to show that nothing is ever finished. You have to keep working on yeah, your product. And also, this is the same for my Mindful Breath product. It's something that's still in development. Obviously, my master's is finished, and what I did create a working product that's available online to use. It's still, in my eyes, not perfect, not finished. And it's something that I do work on with the MyUse team and giving them, yeah, my ideas and my interpretations of how it should look when it does get released. And so, yeah, that's my presentation. I hope, yeah, it was informative and yeah, entertaining, and that you could see the parallels between Batman and designing a product.
Great. Thank you so much, Barra, for those insights into your project. Now, before we get to the questions part, I'd like to welcome back Laura to the conversation. There she is. So we heard about specific lessons learned from superheroes, Batman, but also Laura mentioned a couple of other examples. Maybe a question to you, Laura, would be, who do you see failing like a superhero at the moment? Like, especially in the current situation, there's probably lots of examples of fails, but also wins and lessons learned. So who do you see in that regard?
Well, for me, failing like a superhero is actually, if there's a problem, can you correct it and move forward and create a better customer experience through that? And one of the ones that recently happened to me, I mean, we're all consumers, so we all have some customer experience expertise from the other side, and we know what not good looks like. But I recently had an issue with a product that arrived from a company called Stitch Fix. And Stitch Fix is a subscription retail clothing company out of San Francisco, very data-driven. They tell me what I want. They send a box of things to me, and they sent some things. And actually one was where I said, yeah, I want another one of those. They sent that, and the tag was wrong. So I actually got the wrong product, but the tag says it's the right thing. So this took a while. There's a window of time I have to return things. I called, I said, this was a gift for a friend. I didn't see it until later. And I said, no problem. They refunded the money right away, sent the things back, no issue, super friendly. And I thought, there's a win, Stitch Fix. They were fantastic. They're out there all over the place, and a lot of smaller ones. And frankly, every mid-sized company that's quietly done a shift to a more digitalized business or to react to their own customers' changing needs, they're feeling like heroes too. I mean, it's test and learn the whole way along, and they're succeeding. Coming out a year later from COVID, there are a lot of these great cases.
Okay, interesting. I think we've all seen these cases and then had either really good or really bad experiences with the customer support, and then how you remember also the company and your experience with them. In your keynote, you touched upon the topic of trends and technologies at the moment, and which ones could be the most important or beneficial for also customer experience moving forward. Maybe can you elaborate a little bit on that aspect? Which ones do you really see as the important ones for customer experience in the future?
Customer experience, we react to personalization, and I find this is an area that's really at odds with the data protection. we don't want to have to think for ourselves. We want people to know exactly what we need. We want to be recognized when we come on a site, so that we can do our transactions without having to input all kinds of things again, but we want it all secure. So I think these two areas of personalization and security, those are going to be massively important. And along with the personalization, you have an aspect of AI. So helping us, just like Netflix helps us decide, I forget what the statistic is for Netflix, something like 85% of everything we watch is what Netflix says we should watch. It's shocking, but it's effective. And Netflix is really doing a tremendous amount with AI for helping us get to a point of happiness and satisfaction without having to do too much work. It's this convenience factor.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Then maybe Barra, a question for you. You mentioned that you had a lot of learnings from talking with users and what their expectations are. So, what would you say then are what's the effect of not testing with your users? As one part of the question. The second part would be, you mentioned that you interviewed 4 people. So maybe people in the audience are also wondering, is that enough? Should you interview 500 people? So what would you recommend in terms of sample sizes?
Yeah, for the first question, I mean, if I had not tested with my users earlier, then I would have basically released the first version of my prototype, and yeah, would have not had those quantitative scores that I showed towards the end. The NPS score is minus 25, which means I don't think anybody would have recommended it to a family member, a friend, or a colleague. So really, the adoption just wouldn't be there, and we decided on following a user-centered design approach. So yeah, without testing and without usability testing, you're really not doing yourself any favors. And yeah, you're much more likely to fail without having usability tests that way. And for your second question, yeah, about the number of users, and it's quite a hot topic in the UX industry at the moment. And in my view, if you're focused on qualitative data, 5 users is enough, according to Nielsen Norman statistically. But there's a caveat on that: you should test often. It's not enough just to test with 5 users and then that's it. You're okay, you're done. It's iteratively testing with those 5 users and getting constant feedback. So it goes back to what I said about testing often. Test with your target users as often as you can. They don't always have to be the same people. For this particular project, I just used the same people, but for qualitative data, 5 users is oftentimes enough, but you should test often with 5 users. If you're looking for quantitative data, or if you need to, for example, get stakeholders on board, then you might also want to consider more of a quantitative approach. With that, you would need a lot more testers to validate your numbers. But if it's solely usability feedback and you're trying to validate designs, then really once you go over 5 users, you'll find, statistically they start finding the same issues. So.
Okay, thank you. Maybe a follow-up question from the audience. Let's do this one and then one more question from the audience as well. How do you get to those people who might not be so open about their activities and sharing, what their needs are? So how do you get people to find those people, and I guess also open them to open up talking to you?
Yeah, and as I said in the presentation, this was a 2-year research project from the university, and they basically held workshops where they asked students to come along and pose as a fictional persona and give that persona a background and give them answers to how that person might live their life, what kind of drugs they would use, how often they would use it, and why they would use them. So the student wouldn't actually be giving information about themselves on record or on paper. They would be giving information on what they believed or perhaps what they saw was happening in their everyday life. And so that was a really important aspect of this project, was to do no harm and to not criticize people for being open and honest. At the beginning of each interview, we really let people know, look, there's no right or wrong answer. we're not noting down what you say you're doing. It's more to build a product. It's not about, it's not about knowing, what drugs you use or why you use them. It's more about creating a product that will help them lead a better life if they want that.
Okay, that makes sense. And I think also in general, people are, especially the opportunity to voice your opinion online in these past years, people are a bit more used to it, at least than they were maybe 10 years ago. Maybe one more question for you, Laura, from the audience regarding this concept of superheroes. So the question was, why do you think this concept is so much more important for people these days? And also just being virtual or, having this digital situation, how does that impact our ability to lead?
Superheroes today, I think this represents for us an ideal of leadership and an ideal of power. And when we're in a time of so much uncertainty, having that image or that feeling of inspiration and power and using power for good, and we can overcome, that's exciting, that's useful. And it's especially valuable now as we have fewer and fewer personal interactions face-to-face, but so much more is digital. Ironically, thinking about superheroes helps us think more about how to be more human to each other, even though we're not in a face-to-face situation. So just like Greek myths or whatever legend you want to look to, it's a way for us to help think about our own best self, our own superpowers, and our own purpose in life. I think that's why they're important today, as they have been for years.
Okay, awesome. Well, time's up. It was very, very exciting to hear your keynotes, your presentations, also sharing your insights and tips and tricks when it comes to the topic of customer experience. I certainly learned something myself, and I also hope you guys in the audience have some nice takeaways to kind of become or expand on your own superhero skills when it comes to customer experience. So thank you very much for joining, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your morning, evening, depending on where you are, and hopefully see you at the next Digital Thinkers Forum. So take care and goodbye.
Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.